There is a line in the gospel reading today that could summarize the ultimate goal of every Christian life. And that line is this: when fully trained, every disciple will be like his teacher. And for the follower of Jesus Christ, this is the only goal. We want to be like Jesus. We want to pray as Jesus prayed, walk as Jesus walked, talk as Jesus talked. We want to live our lives like Jesus lived his life. We want to be like our teacher. But guess what? It turns out that it's hard to live like Jesus. And so oftentimes we end up following other people instead. Celebrities, athletes, politicians, blind guides. People who can't really show us the way, but people who have the sorts of lives that we think we want. When we see people who are rich and famous, successful and powerful, we think, hey, that looks pretty good. And so we follow blind guides and end up in pits. Every time we turn on the evening news, we can observe firsthand what results from following blind guides. World leaders who lead their countries from peace into war. When we follow blind guides, we're led into pits. But there's good news. Jesus can pull us out of those pits. When King David, the psalmist, found himself in a pit, he wrote these words: I waited patiently for the Lord. He inclined to me and heard my cry. He drew me up from the desolate pit, out of the miry bog, and set my feet upon a rock, making my steps secure. He goes on to say, happy are those who make the Lord their trust, who do not turn to the proud. In other words, don't follow blind guides. Don't follow the proud. Follow Jesus, who is meek and humble of heart. Not only does Christ warn his disciples against following blind guides, but he also warns them not to allow their own pride to rob them of their sight. Essentially saying, listen, if you have a log in your own eye, what in the world are you doing trying to remove a splinter from someone else's? If following blind guides is dangerous, just try to imagine the damage that would be done by a blind eye surgeon. When we have sin in our lives that we haven't dealt with, it's like having a giant beam in our eye. It's all we're able to see. And guess what? When we see a splinter in someone else's eye, what do you think it looks like? A giant beam. Because the beam dominates our entire field of vision. It's all we can see. This is why if I struggle with pride myself, I might find myself infuriated with someone else who's arrogant. If I tend to stretch the truth just a little, I can't stand it when someone else lies to me. The sin in our own lives is magnified when we try to look past to see the sin in someone else's life. And so the Master tells us, remove the wooden beam from your own eye first. Then you will see clearly to remove the splinter in your brother's eye. Don't be blind guides. Don't perform delicate surgery on others when your own vision is impaired. Don't try to teach others until you first spent time as a student. Get your own house in order first. Up to this point, Christ has been talking about the dangers of pride and hypocrisy, about those who would rather teach than learn, those who would rather lead than follow, those who would rather deal with someone else's sins rather than their own. And then Jesus begins to teach the disciples about how to discern between good and evil, both in their own lives and also in the lives of others. In the first reading today, we see that a person's character, who they really are when things are difficult, will be revealed when they speak. It is then that their fruit is revealed. So too does one's speech disclose the bent of one's mind. And our Lord agrees. According to Jesus, a good tree does not bear rotten fruit, nor does a rotten tree bear good fruit. For from the fullness of the heart, the mouth speaks. In other words, you are who you are through and through. We can't hide what's in our hearts. Sooner or later, when we are put to the test, what's inside of us will come out. Our fruit will be revealed. A thorn bush isn't going to grow figs. You can't pluck grapes from brambles. And as the old saying goes, you can put lipstick on a pig, but it's still a pig. Our hypocrisy won't really fool anyone. So what are we supposed to do if we want to actually be like Jesus? Because apparently it's no good pretending. If we want to pray as Jesus prayed, walk as Jesus walked, talk as Jesus talked, if we want to live our lives like Jesus lived his life, how do we actually accomplish that? I think we can find the answer by looking at another place in the Gospels where Jesus talks about producing good fruit. In St. John's Gospel, Jesus tells his disciples, I am the true vine, and my Father is the vine grower. Abide in me as I abide in you. Just as the branch cannot bear fruit by itself unless it abides in the vine, neither can you unless you abide in me. I am the vine, you are the branches. Those who abide in me and I in them bear much fruit, because apart from me you can do nothing. My Father is glorified by this, that you bear much fruit and become my disciples. This is the answer to the question of how we can bear good fruit. We must first be grafted into Christ. If we are to produce good fruit, it can't come from us, because apart from him, we can do nothing. In St. John's Gospel, Christ goes on to say, you did not choose me, but I chose you, and I appointed you to go and bear fruit that will last, so that the Father will give you whatever you ask him in my name. I am giving you these commands so that you may love one another. We are reminded of Christ's commission to us at the end of every Mass when we are told, go forth, the Mass is ended. We are sent forth to do something, to bear fruit, to love one another, to lift up our brothers and sisters around the world who are threatened by war and violence, to pray for the peace of Christ. The bishop's appeal today is an invitation to go forth and bear fruit. It is an invitation to unite ourselves to Christ so that we may love one another, not just in word, but in deed. It is an invitation to be like Jesus by joining ourselves to him and by allowing him to produce fruit in our lives. As the second reading today exhorts us, therefore, my beloved brothers and sisters, be firm, steadfast, always fully devoted to the work of the Lord, knowing that in the Lord your labor is not